Hello,
Hello, the video is on. How are you?
I'm feeling amazing. How are you?
So good. I'm so excited for this call. It's been a long time coming for us, but I'm so excited that we are finally sitting down and having this conversation together. Um, I really quickly just want to jump in here for a minute and speak to those who are listening in because, as you and I are both aware, this is being completely pre recorded. So, I just wanted to take a moment aside here to really welcome everyone who, wherever you're listening from, whether you are listening in through earphones or watching us over on YouTube, however you're listening to this, I really want to welcome you into this space. I really encourage you to get comfortable, get a drink, grab a notepad, anything that you really want that is going to allow you to just be fully present for this session. It's going to be such a fun session, and I'm really excited for it. Mara and I always have like the best conversations when we jump on these lives and everything together. So I really encourage you just to allow this time to really immerse yourself in the conversation. And the notebook is simply just there because I know within myself, when I listen to a podcast or a YouTube video, sometimes there's certain things that really land for you that you're like, I need to write that down before I forget or something like that. So it's really just there just in case you need it, not because you actually have to have it. So yeah, just really welcome you. Thank you so much for being here. Mara, is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered it all. That was an amazing introduction. So I'm excited to get started.
Beautiful. So we're just going to have your attention for about 30 to 40 minutes or so today. Today, Mara and I are really focusing on the topic of mentorship and coaching and utilizing those containers in a really healthy way, diving deeper into the role and the responsibility of the coach or mentor, but also the role and responsibility of the client and anything else that kind of comes up within this space for us today. So nothing that we're talking about today is scripted, which I think is so incredible because Mara and I do have the ability to really hold a natural conversation, a really constructive conversation. So there's always so many amazing things that come up that we're like, we don't even think of prior to speaking on, but it naturally just kind of bounces back and forth. We do have I do have some dot points here just in case we do get off track and everything, but otherwise it's going to be a completely organic conversation. And I'm thinking that today we might do things like a little bit backwards. And we might actually kind of introduce where in coaching and mentorship we actually work with at the end of this session. So, for anyone who's listening and actually wants to know more so about how to work with us, we'll talk about that at the end. But for now, we're really just going to talk on today's topic. And if you do want to follow us later on, the links will be in the description box. So I really want to start off today's session just briefly talking on the difference between mentorship and a coach. There is a distinctive difference in these types of containers, and it's something that I've had the joy of experiencing both and facilitating both, but it's also something that I feel is a little bit misunderstood by those who are new to the coaching space. So we're going to talk about just a coach and a mentor for a moment. But when you have someone who is a coach, they're coming and meeting you on your level. So they're coming to you and soundboarding for you. You're coming to them with the issues that are at hand. They might be reflecting some questions to you. They're really assisting you and guiding you at the level that you're at. They're meeting you at the needs that you need right now, and really going through and guiding you. But when it comes to a mentor, this is slightly different, and you can have someone who does both, like myself, which is hybrid, but someone who is a mentor, you're more so going to them through a view of leadership of like, okay, I know that that person has transcended or moved through this or mastered something, whether they're teaching something specific. And I'm going to go to them from the perspective of I want to learn from them and the way that they would approach things and the way that they would tackle things. So slightly a little bit different if you think back to like old school. I love referring to things like Reiki and stuff. If you look back at like old school like karate and dojos and monks and stuff like that, they always have this leader and this person who is sitting up the top, and you go to them with the vision of like, okay, amazing, like I am inspired by this and I want to get their perspective. It's kind of the exact same thing, only we're going to talk later about how the hierarchy is a little bit distorted and not quite what it seems. But that's really the difference between the two, is that with a mentor, you're looking at trying to rise up and trying to see things from their vision, versus the coach is really trying to look through your lens and through your vision at that point in time. So there is a little bit of a difference there. The other thing that I really wanted to speak on when it comes to a coach and a mentor is the level of intentionality when we go into these containers is going to be so important. Having a clear intention as to whether we go with a mentor, a coach, or someone who can facilitate both. So practicing really important discernment around what it is that we actually need, and having a mindset approach of knowing that our conscious mind only holds 5%, but that we're open to expanding on our awareness, and know that someone else might have something slightly different to our 5% that can expand and also amplify our journey and really assist us. So we're looking at coaches and mentors as a support, not someone to do the work for us. Mara, do you have something to add on, like, behind having, someone like with a coach, not having them do all the work for you? Do you have anything you want to put in with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like when you were just sharing the distinction between mentorship and coaching, for myself, the biggest thing I've realized is in mentorship and kind of more of those like group containers, because I guess as well with mentorship, you can have one-to-one or you can have more of a group container. And I personally have been in the group containers where you are like, you get that hot seat kind of front row, listening to that person, listening to their jewels of wisdom that they have, because they have been through that exact struggle you've already been through prior, and they've mastered that, like Cass was saying. So they're teaching you that. But what I've found personally is that there's still a lot of that self like initiation that you still have to hold yourself accountable to throughout that journey. So you and that is also the same in one-to-one coaching. You are still the one that has to do the work. But what I love about one-to-one coaching is how we have, like Cass was saying, we've got our conscious and subconscious mind. So our conscious mind is 95% of who we are. And that's our decision making. It's like those choices we're making in the immediate moment. Whereas our subconscious mind, which is 95% of who we are, has all our belief systems, our like understandings of things. So it's all these programmings that are happening in the background. And because that's 95% of who we are, a lot of the time these belief systems can be happening, we're not even realizing that they're there. They're just so inherent in who we are that they're like a default system. So as we're journeying through these containers, sometimes we're not privy to these belief systems that are coming up. And that's what I really, from personal experience, what I've loved about the coaching space is you've got someone there who's listening to you and is able to stop you when you're explaining something, being like, tell me a little bit more about that. You've said this, now let's dig into that. Is that a belief? Is that actually true? Because when we can stop ourselves and not just keep going on this pattern we've been telling ourselves, we are then given all this awareness to change. So straight away, that is something I've really loved about that coaching. But with the mentorship as well, there's nothing like being in a group of people and being with each other's energy and supporting each other in that process of transformation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've noticed a very distinctive change between the two containers. And like also myself, I'm in both. I facilitate both. And I find that you really do get different things out of each. And that's why that intentionality at the beginning is so important, to really have that discernment around what you need. And you can have both. Like you can benefit from both. You can be in both. You can be in one. You can be in another. And like you said, it's not always talking about being in a group or being in one-on-one. Mentorship, coaching, all of that can be done in so many different ways. It can be done as one-on-one. It can be done as a class. It can be done as a group. It can be done as a mastermind. Like there are so many different ways that you can receive coaching and mentorship, but that intentionality is going to be the difference between a container actually landing for you and long-term change, or you just simply just being a witness in the passenger seat while it's happening. Like there's going to be that difference between how things land based on if you're actually getting yourself into the right spaces. And I so agree with you on coaches being able to actually call you out on things when you have those one-on-ones, because they are building a relationship with you. They are learning the patterns within, from one call to the next to the next. They're really starting to grasp your identity, and beyond the 5% of what you feel that you've let on, they're really starting to see how your projections are playing out. They're really starting to see how you're justifying things. They're seeing everything that isn't necessarily being verbalized. They're seeing the tonality, they're seeing the intentionality, they're seeing everything from all areas. They're able to see from that complete stand back observation view, where they can really start to pull at things and show you blind spots. And I think that's so important, where they can reflect those blind spots, because sometimes that is what we need to get to that next level. Sometimes we're like, oh, I feel like, I've really covered this area of my shadow work or my inner child healing or something. And often that's where we've only scratched the surface, because we've just done that 5%. We've just done what's sitting in our conscious mind. And yet our coach can be like, actually, I've also just witnessed this from call 1 to 3. Or also, I noticed in something that you mentioned the other day in our group container, that this is actually what is coming up here. So it's so important there to really know the difference in the containers, and then also kind of have a basic understanding of what your needs are. And it's going to be a little bit tricky sometimes for people stepping into the coaching space, because maybe you don't actually know what you don't know when you first step into it. And that's where it can be really helpful stepping in first with a coach, or stepping into a container like a class, where you can actually start to really break down and get to know your needs, so that then you can actually just decipher where you're supposed to be going on, and if you need both or if you just need one. That's like, that whole discernment around your specific needs is going to be so important. Something else, sorry, something else that I really just wanted to speak on was the signs of like a coach or a mentorship. So when we were just talking about figuring out what spaces to be in, something I really wanted to land in here was the signs that a coach or a mentor isn't actually quite where you need to be. Like maybe they're not the right coach for you, or maybe you're just finding yourself in the wrong containers. And I find that the best way to really decipher whether or not a mentor is actually going to be right for you in this stage of your journey, knowing that this could change in future, is coming back to that intention. Coming back to that intention and seeing, then leaning in, looking at, that mentor or that coach's, their area of expertise, or their area of their own personal experience, or their passion, or something like that. I'm really looking at if those two line up, because no one coach or mentor is going to be the right fit for every single person when you're moving out of things that are like classes and courses and into one-on-one or group. I feel like there's a different level of investment there, regardless of money, where you're actually looking at people for that relationship as well, and that level of awareness and understanding from them. And I feel like that's really important there. Do you have anything that you feel has come up for you where you've kind of noticed like someone's really like a really good coach for you, or not quite the right fit?
Yeah, I think like you said, like that intention is everything. And it's that thing, right? Like energy kind of is more powerful than words. And so I guess when I'm making investments in like a coach or a mentor, I'm really looking at like, one, how I feel in the energy of that person. So I will really spend my time, listening to their work, listening to their videos, trying to like be in their energy. And then it's like this, I'm also bringing a little bit of human design, a sacral authority. So I get that real gut response of like, this is my person, or I'm not really vibing there. And I really trust that. And I think that's coming back to intuition as well.
Absolutely.
Just trusting it. And I love how you said, like, with the intention of really feeling into where do you need support most right now? Because one thing I've found for myself, and kind of touching on what I mentioned at the start of this, is if we have been in a cycle of like lots of limiting beliefs and really negative patterns, I feel like there's like that balance of things that we can shift through ourselves. But then there's some beliefs that are so deeply ingrained and have been there for so long that sometimes even when we're doing that work, we can't necessarily see it. And we're kind of in a way like can bypass beliefs that are so fundamental that even though we're doing the work, there's still these big ones that we're missing. So I think it's knowing in yourself, like, what level do I need to be like seen and held accountable at right now? Because coming back to what like we were saying at the start, like you are the one that has to take each step in your life. You are the one that's going to make the change. It's, you know, it's like that thing, you can lead a horse to water but you can't make them drink. So you can be given all the right information and be accepting it logically, but if there's a belief system there of like not worthiness or not believing it to be true, and I'm saying this from experience because I've been that one who literally devours information, like will read so many spiritual books and do all the things, but then it got to a point where I saw these patterns coming back on repeat, and I'm like, why are things not shifting here? And then I actually had to stop and check in with myself and go, okay, there's some things that really need my attention right now that I haven't yet attended to. And then in that place, I was like, I don't want to go at this alone. I like, even though I would love a group container, I feel like I need someone to really just hold my hands through this journey because, you know, shadow work is big, it's uncomfortable, it's scary. And there's some things that like can be really tender to lean into. So knowing that you don't have to go at that alone, and that's where it comes back to the energy of the person you're investing into is going to mean everything. Because the way I see it, like the word intimacy comes up. It's a very intimate container. Like your coach or your mentor gets to know you on so many different levels, and you're also going to be sharing things that like you probably don't share with everyone, because to really dig into the deep things of what's keeping us stuck, there's a level of vulnerability that has to come with that. So I think fundamentally you have to feel safe as well.
Absolutely. There's definitely, you know, an element of a relationship and a relationship with trust that is built between yourself and a coach. And this is one of like the other things that I wanted to speak on is this whole, you know, what to do, whether you settle with a coach, whether you jump around from coaches, and how to navigate all of that. And there's something that was really important. There's two lessons actually that were really important that, you know, I really learned the last couple of years. And the first one was that if you jump coach all the time, like as if you were changing hairdressers all the time, you're not going to be able to get to the same depths as if you were to stay with the one coach and allow themselves to see those blind spots. As you go through that time of getting to know them and having your sessions with them, they're going to start learning things. Otherwise, it's a bit like going to the doctor and then going to another 7 doctors and repeating your same story 100 times. They're only going to be able to fill in that first session that surface level information versus staying with someone who's going to be able to get deeper, right? And that's something that was really important. And the second thing that came through to me was, and this was something that I didn't actually experience, but it was a lesson that was passed on to me that I found really landed with me, was not jumping to hire your coach's coach straight away. Right? Like not just jumping to go over the top of your coach and then go to the next level, because that's not out of intentionality for you. And it's also not acknowledging that your coach had different things to transcend with their coach. So that actually doesn't automatically mean that their coach is going to be the right fit for you. It also doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to bypass all of the work either and get there faster by going and creating this hierarchy that doesn't actually truly exist. This whole coaching and mentorship hierarchy, and it's spoken about in a lot of containers, is something that systematically, because we as humans are so habitual, we've just naturally created like this leadership hierarchy that doesn't actually necessarily exist. And you'll hear it spoken about by many different coaches and mentors that the hierarchy isn't actually technically a thing. It's just something that everyone has somewhat created. And it's really important to just come back to what coach or what mentor is right for you, not how much that coach is earning, not, you know, how many qualifications are sitting on their wall. And that was something that really landed as well, talking about qualifications on the wall and everything, is that qualifications, as we know, will only take us so far. Life experience will take us that little bit further. We can only hold our clients as deep as we can hold ourselves. So it's so important that we're looking, like if we're taking a holistic approach of ourselves, we also need to take that holistic approach of looking at our mentors and looking at our coaches and being like, okay, so I'm going to invest in this space. What do I know about this coach? What do I know about my mentor? Like, do they care for their own mental health and their own, wellness outside of their business? Do they, take care of themselves by having their own coaching and their own mentorship? Like, there's so many things there. We need to really look at our investment as looking at it as that personal relationship with them, and really looking at, like, having, like you said, that energetic connection with our coach and our mentor. And that's why it can't simply just be a one person fits all when it comes to coaching and mentorship. I do truly believe that when you're in those spaces, there is that level of actual connection there, because that connection is so important for that sense of trust and for the ego to really let the guard down and let the gates down. Like, the ego is sitting there waiting for a moment to feel like it can be vulnerable. And I feel like a lot of people wait too long just by overanalyzing, like, how many qualifications does this person have? How many clients have they worked with? How much money do they make? Rather than, what impact can they make on me? How can they provoke me into my next level of healing, into my next level of reframe and mindset? And how can they provoke me into, whatever path you're going down? Because of course, there's different types of mentors, there's different types of coaches, depending on what kind of industry you're in. Like, I have a mentor for business, I have a mentor for personal. Sometimes my personal kind of meddles into business a little bit. But it's really about that intentionality and knowing that my personal mentor can't necessarily hold me in everything in my business. My business mentor can't necessarily hold me in everything in my personal. That's a lot of expectation to put on one person, to expect them to hold like 100, different areas of your life. So it's really about that intentionality of, when you go to someone, like, looking at what they can hold yourself in. And like you said, Mara, like, knowing and having that discernment around what kind of soundboard you need, whether you need someone to be like giving you a space to feel heard and feel seen, whether you need someone to reflect things to, or whether you need someone who you're reflecting things to and speaking on what you've brought up, and then they can help you provoke thought patterns to go further. Like, there's so many different levels there, and that is just the whole discernment, like that word in itself is so important when it's about utilizing this space really in a healthy way, and ensuring that, like you said, like, when you're talking about those books, you can accumulate all this information, and yet if you don't actually make any active change, nothing changes. You can be as aware as you want to be, you can be as conscious as you want to be with your shadow work, your inner child healing, and yet you won't actually have transcended anything if you don't physically make a change. Like, there's got to be the duality in both of that. There's got to be the awareness, there's got to be the observation, there's got to be the contemplation, there's got to be the action. There's got to be all of it in the one to actually get somewhere. And sometimes, having a coach or a mentor is really helpful for that self-accountability of, like, you're playing it small. You actually have the awareness there, and you're playing it small because you could actually be doing this over here. Is there anything you want to add to any of that?
Yeah, like with what you're saying just there as well, that concept of like playing small. And I think it's so important to also look for someone who is going to challenge you. And I think in life, we sometimes shy away from being pushed and being challenged in ways that are uncomfortable. But when we truly lean into that uncomfortability and are really met, like someone who can like meet us where we are, but they're coming from that place of love and intention, not competition, not some ulterior motive, but they genuinely want the best for you, and they can see from like that observer perspective what's just waiting on the other side. Having someone there that can really like challenge you in that moment and want that next expansion for you. That's going to feel scary and uncomfortable, but also you can start feeling this liberation and also this possibility that then comes through with that, is such a good thing. And coming back to what you were saying about not jumping all the time and sticking it out as well, is that sometimes getting to that place takes time. Sometimes it takes so much unlearning and just stripping back all the layers until you finally get to that root thing and you can look at it and be like, right, like now I can see it, now I can change it. And that does take time. And I think that's shifting out of the short-term vision and into long-term vision, and coming back to who can best support me in that long term. Because I really feel like with mentors and coaches, you want someone who's walking the walk, not just talking the talk. It's that thing of like, don't tell me who you think you are, show me that through what you do, how you're showing up, because that energy is contagious as well. So I think for me, it's that level of authenticity that comes through. And also with that authenticity, can't even speak right now. But someone who's like, you see that courage that's come through and they've pushed themselves through those limits. And from that place, it gives you that hope that like, wow, if I like really commit myself to this, then this is what could be available for me also.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the other thing is you're talking about long-term focus when it comes to mentorship and coaching. And that's a really important one there, that the coaching and mentorship industry is finally moving away from result-focused mentorship and coaching. We're moving into mature investment of, we're not necessarily just always driven by, I want to learn this and I want to master this tomorrow. Like you said, it takes time, and results focus is only going to get you so far. And I feel like this has really changed in the coaching space, where a lot of people are getting more educated on looking at the longer term, more consistent result, more consistency in their daily lives, their habits and everything, rather than just this one quick fix, rather than just this one small manifestation. And I really feel like clients aren't necessarily always just going into a container with one specific, question, one specific outcome that they're after. They're actually starting to jump into it, open to more than just what they go into it. Because if you go into a container and you're like, your high beams are on, your tunnel vision's on, and you're like, I am invested in this because I want to learn X, you're going to miss Y and Z. Because your ego is going to spend so much time, they've heard this part, and then the rest of the call, they're just sitting there channeling away, looking back at the original thing. They're kind of like zoned out of the rest of it. The rest of it can't land for them. So I feel like there has been a really positive change there, where people are starting to move away from that result instant fix and move into a longer term approach. And the awesome thing about this is it's actually dissolving the codependency on coaches. For a long time there was, if we look at traditional therapy, they actually released a study this year that showed that traditional talk therapy and starting with talk therapy can actually do more harm than good, because it can re-traumatize the patient or the client, because we didn't actually start with nervous system regulation. And something that I love in the coaching and the mentorship industry and all of that is that we are starting to bring in different modalities and tools to actually support our clients through that space. And I really encourage those who are interested in jumping into the coaching or the mentorship space to ensure that no matter what, no matter who you are investing with, you are still prioritizing emotional regulation, and that you're still utilizing tools so that you don't become codependent on your coach, so that you actually are able to continue doing the work for yourself. And you're not just spending this whole time feeling like, I need to call my coach right now because I'm having a nervous breakdown and I need them like right this second. That's not healthy. Like, the way to utilize these containers is that they are a support, but not that we can't necessarily do any of the work without them. We can absolutely do the work without them. It's just going to take longer. But if you have a coach or a mentor who's bringing in different modalities, or they're giving you resources, or they're leaning on tools, it's going to be so much more effective. The ego itself is going to drop. The ego itself is going to step away from what I call CEO mode And it's actually going to allow you to adjust and modify your mindset, adjust and modify your behaviors, your decisions, everything, your coping mechanisms, your projections, your relationships, your connections, everything. But we need to have like all of these involved. We need to not just have talk. I've been seen, I've been validated, I've been heard. There's got to be another element. There's got to be an element where we actually learn how to regulate ourselves so that we're not triggered as soon as we hit that call with our coach or our mentor. Because if we just hit this trigger the moment that we come in there, what happens? We build resentment. I'm out of here. I want a new coach. Guess what? There was actually nothing wrong with that coach. We just needed to be able to bring ourselves to a space. We needed to actually witness that we weren't in an emotionally regulated state to actually have that conversation. So there is a really big level of responsibility there for the coach to actually have a look at what the, nervous system is like for their client and whether or not they're actually in a position to have this conversation. But also on the client to ensure that when they go into these containers, they are actually able to immerse themselves in them and be present. But I feel like that is something that is so important, and something that I'm loving in this space is that it is changing, it is evolving. Coaches, mentors, clients, they're all leaning on these tools, these modalities, all these different resources, and we're actually starting to see a deeper effect. They're bringing out the research, they're showing, and this research is, accumulated over a very long period of time, and they can physically see the healing on a physical level, not just a mindset level, of those who are going through a coaching space or a mentorship space in a way that actually heals and processes the wounds and the traumas, but not just from a point of just talking back and forth, but actually constructively getting to the root cause of where these shadows and these wounds and everything has actually come from. And I'm really admiring that this is starting to transform in this space, because I feel like it is something that was absolutely missing when I was younger, when I was, as a teen going to therapy. I 100% feel like this is something that was so long called for into this space. And I'm really excited that it is now starting to become much more a part of this space. Do you have anything else that you want to touch on?
Yeah, just with that as well, like I totally agree, because what I'm seeing now is this integration of the mind, body, and spirit. So like you said, it's not just this thing of just talking and trying to mentally work our way through it, but a lot of it is dropping back into the body, connecting back to our heart, feeling where heaviness is stored, actually starting to personify it, give it a name, give it some sort of like something that you can like consciously be aware of and see that it's not actually a part of you. It's just something that is in your field. And when we can feel into the body, and even just a simple practice of breathing through an emotion that's coming up, because there is science coming forward now saying we can actually only experience an emotion in its full entirety for about 90 seconds. So sometimes when we're like really feeling that heavy emotion, instead of being like apologizing and trying to suppress it and push it down, but just putting the hands on the heart and feeling it and breathing through it can be so deeply healing. And from that space, once that time has elapsed and you can just breathe, there is a level of clarity that comes from within as well that is so strong and so deep that you start realizing how powerful you actually are, how powerful the words of wisdom within you can come through and provide such deep healing that didn't require so much logical back and forth of trying to really understand something, but maybe just for a second, just feel it. Just feel the feelings as well. So, and I love as well with the body that's coming through is understanding that, our physical body is giving us this life, right? It's giving us this physical manifestation. And so I think a lot of the time with spirituality, we can get lost in the 5D and in the dreaming and anchoring things forward. And I'm, again, guilty of forgetting to connect that back down to the 3D, connecting back to my body and making sure that it's safe and well and healthy. So it's like incorporating, it is that mind, the body, making sure the body feels good, and the spirit as well, allowing that soul to speak forward. So I love that there is this holistic approach moving forward, and the fact that with that as well, there is so much personality between each coach, each mentor. They're giving a part of themselves in what they're offering. It's not just a framework. It's not just what they've been taught, but it's their story. It's, like you said, that wisdom, what they've been through. Knowledge is just knowledge, but when it's embodied through their processes of life, what they've been through, it for their people. And that's why, like Cass was saying, one coach for one person may not be the best match for another person, because it is what someone's been through and the words they share and that emotion that is going to hit. So like, it's going to hit home for certain people, and it's going to hit them in a place where it's like, you are speaking right to my soul. And like, I just feel seen and I feel safe. So I just think it's this beautiful new evolvement that is fun, and it is empowering, and it is healing, and all of it at the same time. So yeah, I'm just excited to watch this space unfold even further.
Yeah, the next couple of years are going to be so interesting in this space, and really watching everything evolve. And, you know, like you were saying, when we're talking about like the coaches and what's right for one person isn't right for the other, like our embodiment of everything, our body and our ego is looking for the tangible evidence in a leader that it's a safe path to travel, that it's a safe path to explore. So it's so like important that you do connect with your mentor when you're doing it in a capacity that's like group or one-on-one. It's a little bit different in a space if you're going into, you know, a class or a course, and it's a little bit more of a teaching element, because you can really take that emotional stance out of it, depending what it is, and just getting the awareness. But when you're coming into those spaces where it's one-on-one, where it's, you know, group, and you're really starting to get that personal aspect, it's so important that you have that level of trust. And coming back to something that I mentioned before about, you know, not having that codependency on your coach as well, something that I overlooked and I forgot to mention was that by avoiding that codependency, and, you know, now we're in this space where we are giving tools and we're having modalities brought in and everything, it's actually building a deeper sense of self-trust in yourself as you go through this journey, because you're doing the work. You're the one who's transcending things. You're the one who's learning. You're the one who's putting in the action, who's doing the change. And so you actually overall start to develop that deeper sense of self-trust within yourself, because as you look back at that path, you did it. It was you, no one else. Your coach, your mentor, they facilitated the session. They provoked you in what direction to go, but you did the work. And that is huge. That is so important. And often, sometimes we forget just how many things actually go into our involvement in our own coaching and our own mentorship. When we're sitting there, we're working on our mindset. We're, you know, working on our level of commitment to something. We're working on our habits. We're working on our consistency. We're working on our own sense of self-reflection, sense of self-honesty, our own sense of connection to ourself, to our inner child. Like you said, the connection to our mind, body, and spirit, that's like huge. That's one of my biggest messages, is always connecting all three. And you're going to go so much deeper, because everything is completely linked in. Everything is channeled into the other. And if one is not being taken care of, you can just completely collapse like a domino, the entire system of your body, just simply because the whole body is like, I'm in overwhelm because something needs healing. Something needs more attention. Something needs, you know, my care and my compassion and my attention. I am just, like I said, as same as you, I'm so excited to see where the coaching space goes. I'm so excited to see where mentorship goes. Is there anything else you want to add on really utilizing the coaching space in a healthy way?
I think the biggest thing for me is just seeing it as like, what are you waiting for? Like, you really see that mentorship or that coaching container as something where putting, like, just giving it your all, putting all the stories, all the limitations as much as you can in your conscious mind to the side, and telling yourself, like, what have I got to lose by going all in, by showing up, by staying accountable, by doing the work? Because a lot of the time we're just trying to break the old habit of being ourselves, which is a series of thinking and feeling and doing, which then stimulates thinking and feeling and doing. And so it's this cycle we can get caught in. And to break that, we've really got to shift our habits. So a lot of the time in these containers, it's about forming new habits. And those habits are going to feel uncomfortable. Like if it's something that you haven't done ever, and then your coach suggests that, it's probably going to feel really like not necessarily good, or like something that's really big to welcome in, but leaning into the uncomfortability and knowing and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it's in that space that we aren't in control anymore. And when we're not in control, our ego starts to really freak out and go, oh gosh, like I'm in danger here. But when you can realize you're actually not in danger, you're on the cusp of your next expansion, you then allow so much greatness, so much potential to come through, because you start experiencing it for yourself. So I think it's that thing of like, and the other thing that's just come through as well is that by you signing up with the coach or mentor, I learned this principle of you're either paying in your time or your money. So if we are paying our money to a coach or mentor, through that space, we are gaining their wisdom, all the challenges they've been through, to kind of not fast track, but so we can maybe not have to go through the same struggles that they went through to the same capacity. Whereas we might not choose to do that and just go on at our own, which is fine. And a lot of us have done that, but then that's going to take time. It's going to take that trial and error and having to work things out on your own, and a lot of like stopping and starting, which again, I've been there. And that's where I really see the value in mentorship now, is like, wow, someone's done this. They've kind of paved that path, and now they're like, here, like these are my jewels of wisdom. Do with them what you like, but this is what I've experienced. And so it's that thing, we're always paying in one way. It's either money or time.
Absolutely. And something to add there is that everyone has their own edge when it comes to what they can and can't invest. So taking aside for a moment, what coaches are worth in different industries and everything like that, everyone has their own edge of what they can actually invest. But something that I want to highlight here is, like Mara said, you can pay in your time, you can pay in money, but also if you choose to go down the path of doing it alone or doing it on your own for a certain period of time, know that you can do your shadow work, every single day for 5 years. But at some point, you're only going to get so far, because you're always going to be operating at your conscious 5%. So there is going to be a different layer of depth. You're going to be able to get as far as you can with your conscious 5%. You're going to be able to get far. You're going to be able to make change, but it's always going to be as far as what your 5% is. So there are a lot of different ways to take in content. There's a lot of different podcasts, there's books, there's all of this, but it's really important that we're not always just turning to ourselves to come up with our own questions for whether it's our journaling, our shadow work, or anything like that, because it's just coming from our 5%. It's just coming from there. So it's really important to, regardless of whether you're in a one-on-one container, a group container, a class, doing it on your own, that you are expanding your consciousness through some form of external consciousness, whether it's coming from a book, a podcast, a human, whether like one-on-one, however it's coming into your world. The biggest key to change is actually changing the consciousness and the awareness, so then you can make change. That's going to be your biggest thing. But like Mara said, when you've got a coach, when you've got a mentor, they're going to be able to collapse it faster, because you're accessing more than just your 5%. You're accessing an external point of view. And that's going to be extremely helpful, because they can look into this without their ego. They're looking at it without their triggers. They're looking at it with experience. They're looking at it with that expanded consciousness. And they're able to get you there, like Mara said, not necessarily faster, but maybe with a lot less wasted time in searching, because they're able to pinpoint in the direction that you actually need to be looking. It's like having this massive stack of files on your table, going to your coach and being like, what paperwork is actually relevant to me? And they'll just decipher it, pull it apart and go, this is where you need to put your focus. That's what it's like. It's collapsing.
It's just like making your life like in a way easier and more enjoyable. And this analogy that came up as you were sharing that, I actually got this from Manifestation Babe. Wasn't her, but it was a guest speaker, and he was sharing how, like Cass was saying, if you choose to go at it alone, which is fine, but that can take a lot of time. And so he used this analogy of a pen, right? So our pen is our like limiting beliefs. And so as we're working on it on our own journey, we can see the beliefs, we're digging deeper, the beliefs are getting closer, we're going deeper and deeper. And then there's going to get to a point where like the pen gets here, you're going so deep. But then when the pen's here, you can't see it anymore. Like when it's here, I literally can't see that in my vision anymore. But Cass, as the coach, can see me and can see the pen very clearly. So it's like there comes to that point where like it's, like I said, those core sometimes belief systems that we kind of jump around thinking that we're going deeper, but then there's some that are so fundamental that we're just bypassing. So that's where really coaches and mentors can come in and just help bring that into your awareness, because when you can see it, you can change it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Well, I have absolutely loved our call today. I really want to leave this conversation there because that is so, like, I feel like that really sums everything up. But what I want to end this session with is just introducing ourselves again a little bit so that anyone who wants to kind of follow us off this platform and find us on our actual platforms, so leaving YouTube, going over across to our Instagrams here, just a little bit of where in the coaching space you're actually working at the moment, and then I'll jump over and hand over my part.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for everyone's time today. And if you've gotten this far, I really appreciate it. So my Instagram handle is Chrysalis of Remembering. I am a Reiki practitioner, but have recently, or I'd say in the last year, gone through quite a big inner death where I lost my Reiki space due to flooding. And that sent me on this massive discovery within. And I realized how important it is to find the power within yourself to build foundations that will ensure that you withstand any storm, any flood, anything like that in the external world and externally. And what I realized fundamentally is that I wanted to go deep. Like I'm really here to go deep. And for me, my limiting beliefs and my subconscious mind has had such a strong hold on my life and in preventing me on really moving forward, like just always being stuck and truly believing there's something more for me, but not knowing how to get there. And so my journey has taken me into Dharma coaching, which is all about finding your purpose. So we look at your archetypes, a little bit of human design, but mostly one-to-one coaching to really get you at a place where you can see yourself completely in your entirety. You know your strengths, you can also see your shadows, but you know from that place that anything is possible. And there comes this level of confidence with that you know that you are worthy of creating anything your heart desires. But fundamentally, your purpose is not something outside of you, it is always within. So really my work in this iteration right now is bringing you back home to yourself.
Beautiful. Amazing. So my Instagram handle, I am Cass, for those who lost my name through the call. My Instagram handle is Holistic Embodiment Mentor Cass. So I am also a Reiki practitioner. That is how Mara and I originally connected with everything. And I actually started my business many years ago as a psychic doing card readings. That is where I was a closet witch. Everything was in a private group. And over time, I actually dove into my own healing journey of, you know, because I had it in that private space under a name that wasn't even mine. And I went through a process of really looking at my inner child, my shadows, everything, and really uncovering things. I had a lot of built up trauma from my childhood, from my teenage years. I suffered sexual assault when I was a teenager. So I had a lot of things to really uncover. And as I really transcended a lot of my wounds, all of my intuitive disconnection dissolved. I suddenly had so much there that was really available to me. And through all of this journey, I wanted to go and share that with other people. I wanted to liberate other people from the feeling that they were trapped or defined by their wounds, by their, fear of rejection or abandonment, from their fear of, not being enough, or for being too loud, or, all these different limitations and these fears, and that they couldn't actually define their own life, that they had to be defined by their wounds. And so I really guide mostly women, but I am coaching men as well, through women's circles, through masterclasses, through private coaching, and I'm really taking them through a space of both coaching and mentorship. So I access both. And I also have my Reiki there and readings. So I have a lot of different tools. But I really open this big space for people to jump in from the area and the direction that they feel they need to jump in to start their journey. And I really believe in that connection of mind, body, and spirit. That's so important to me. And it is through all the foundations of my business, my journey. It's so important to me that we have this awareness. I'm a mum of 3 boys, and the biggest thing for me is passing this on through them. It's this whole generational transformation of passing the knowledge and the awareness on, that they define their lives, they define their future, they define themselves, not their experiences. That's the biggest thing for me. So you can find both myself and Mara over on Instagram. I believe we're both also on Facebook. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mara. I'm pretty sure we're both on Facebook, but mostly Instagram. So I will put everything in the description box if you want to find us. And I am so grateful for you listening this far. I am more than happy for you all to leave comments in the section if you want to, and I'll come back and check them later. But otherwise, come and connect with us on Instagram. We would absolutely love to connect with you. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me, Mara, for today's call. I absolutely enjoyed it as always.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been such a blessing. And yes, just thank you.
Amazing.